Now, we missed another chance at a ride over the weekend, and, it's just...
I'd forgotten. I was reading all these articles yesterday about the game, which was 11:30 last night between the U.S. and Mexico in the World Cup soccer tournament. And I just forgot this morning. Went to my newsstand, and the lady behind the counter goes, U.S. won. And I'm like, what? Oh, forgot. 2-0. I'm like, wow, this is going to really dishearten.
What nationality is the woman behind the newspapers?
Korean.
Korean. Oh, so it's a big deal there.
Yeah, but she has the TV on all the time, so she couldn't miss the story.
You know what I'm tracking here? Because, as the Lakers were running up to the championship, there's a whole lot of people who watch the Lakers during the playoffs and ignore them during the regular season, I being one of them. And what I'm wondering now is there going to be some significant group of Americans who are suddenly going to show up and watch World Cup coverage on TV to see if this soccer team that nobody's ever heard of, nobody can name. You can go to 1,000 people on the street, like white Americans. None of them can name a single person on the team.
Kobe Jones.
Kobe? Another Kobe?
C-O-B-I.
Oh. I didn't know the World Cup was coming until it was suddenly...
The guy with the weird hair.
And I have a feeling if we lived in most parts of the country, this wouldn't be discussed at all, except that there's such a huge Mexican, contingent here in Southern California. And,
correct.
Koreans and everything, so they're whooping it up, and we're standing and staring saying, why? What are you talking about here?
Didn't you get the point with all the emails we got over the weekend from soccer fans that didn't think we understood?
Every one of them had a foreign name. Did you notice that?
No, I didn't.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't read most of them to the end. I just kind of forwarded mine to you.
You know what? No real American gets turned on by the soccer thing. You got to be a
real American?
Oh, yeah, like a homegrown extract. Yeah. You're coming. You just crawled over the border on your belly. You're getting all worked up about this.
Don't you think like all your sons and all their friends play soccer? Don't you think a couple hang on to the game for many years?
Yeah, but this World Cup thing, it's every 4 years, and it's out in Korea. I mean, there's no way to make an emotional investment. If there was a season, and we could watch every week.
Well, the World Cup was here at the Rose Bowl just a few years back.
Yeah, I know, but since then, I'm sure these teams played one another, but I'm not aware of a league. I'm not aware of a season. I'm not aware of, the march to victory. It's just suddenly every 4 years the World Cup shows up, and the games are on at 2 o'clock in the morning, and a bunch of Mexicans start waving their flags. And so there's no sense that, it's not like it's NBA playoff time or March Madness or it's October and it's the World Series. It's just sort of, what? Where'd this come from? What is this exactly?
Yeah, it's the first time, though, that the U.S. is in the Final Eight since 1930. The Final 8 countries.
I don't know.
And now here come the Germans.
It's not something I was grieving about.
What do we have there? We have like a big Oktoberfest. We've got to play the Germans on Friday.
I don't know.
Now, this was really...
I just can't care.
Unbelievably big stuff to people in Mexico. Of course, Mexican-Americans in Southern California were up all night, but...
Well, they closed the U.S. Embassy in Mexico because they were afraid that the Mexicans were going to riot and burn it down.
Cars were banned in the area. Police searched all those approaching what they call the Angel of Independence Monument, which is a half block from the U.S. Embassy, and apparently that's the traditional center.
For the riot?
Well, it's said here to celebrate. I guess you can have a riot when you celebrate.
Yeah, but listen to this. Cars were banned in the area, and police searched all those approaching for monuments for weapons or alcohol.
Yeah,
that's what the cops thought of their people. Like, here comes somebody to celebrate the soccer game. Let's check them for weapons and alcohol.
One of the people interviewed in this AP story, Jose Luis Luviano, said after the defeat to the United States, it hurts us here, punching his chest. Tears came down his Mexican flag-painted cheeks. There has to be an end to the disgrace where Americans treat us like rats and idiots. This reminds me of how...
That's funny. He feels like a rat and an idiot.
A lot of people in San Francisco get worked up over Southern California, how they hate it, where people down here don't really think about Northern California too much. And then there's some people here that get worked up about their hate for, this is going back some years, for New York. Whatever's bigger, the bigger obstruction.
I don't understand that.
What's supposed to be hovering over you and be the big bullet.
If you like your town or your neighborhood, then like it. What do you care about anybody else's city?
They went to Yuppie Sports Cafe, one of hundreds of restaurants that stayed open for the game, and all stood and sang as the Mexican anthem was played, but a number of people screamed obscenities at the Star-Spangled Banner.
There you go. You hear that? They screamed obscenities at the Star-Spangled Banner. That's enough for a war.
And as it became clear when the U.S. got its second goal that it was over for Mexico, many began to cry and pull their team jerseys over their faces.
Well, they've got nothing else. There's just nothing else.
I guess not.
There's just, you know what? They're going to live in misery now for 4 more years until the next World Cup.
What were a group of Americans doing near this monument, this Angel of Independence monument, just after the game? Apparently they were harassed. 10 Mexicans were detained who were allegedly harassing a group of Americans. The Mexico City newspaper declared, "This is war."
And you know what also irritates them? Is that they're angry, according to this Associated Press story. Listen to this. Mexicans scoff at the state of soccer knowledge among U.S. sports fans, whose nonchalance toward the game makes defeat even more bitter. They're angry that most of us
They're not
don't
paying
know,
attention.
Yeah, don't know anything and don't care. And that makes them mad, which is weird.
Well, you would think that if your country's main sport and a lot of its efforts are devoted to soccer, that they would beat the country where there's no, like you just pointed out, nobody cares, nobody knows what's going on. How did we get a team together that could beat them then? Although you only need 20,
I don't know, that's kind of random. I mean,
20, 30 guys. I don't even know how many guys are in the
they
soccer.
found enough guys, and so the team won. But you know what's weird is had they won, they would have been waving their flags and running around and carrying on, and we still wouldn't have cared. It's like, okay, so you won. So you won your soccer game. So what? And then they still would have been mad. They want us to cry and gnash our teeth, or they want us to at least exult in victory. That would make them feel better if we... But not caring just makes them crazy.
So that's what I was asking you on Friday, if you wanted to get the American flag and go over to like Huntington Park or East L.A. and drive around tooting the horn and celebrating.
If I cared, the U.S. victory. I mean, it's just,
instead most people are like, oh, that's nice.
There's,
we want it.
I don't know. It's like, you can't just turn on a switch and suddenly get excited about something. There has to be a history. You have to follow it. You have to emotionally invest your time or something or other. You have to be inspired by it. I mean, I never get inspired watching soccer players. I get inspired watching, Robert Ory hitting a 25-foot three-pointer at the buzzer. Okay, that's inspiring to watch. Shaq doing a dunk is inspiring. Sean Green hits a 500-foot homer. That's inspiring, right? A last-minute touchdown pass. I don't see anything in soccer that says, "Wow, cool. Wish I could do that. Wish I was that guy. Wow. How do they do that?" And I just say, "Oh, look at that. He hit it off his head." "Well, look at that. He hit it like 30 feet in the air off his head. Wow. Glad I'm not doing that. That looks like it hurts."
You do draw all this excitement from these other sports.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's
a couple times I've turned on the NBA and you're like, "Look at these black guys running around. I don't know anything. I don't know the team. I don't know anything."
I don't know.
You're one of these guys that when the Lakers are making their drive, you tune in.
Well, because they don't care about the regular season, so there's no point in watching them in December when they're losing to a bunch of last-place teams because they don't care. I refuse to watch athletes who don't care. And the playoffs, I know they care.
The record they had if they didn't care, and that way you kind of learn the team, so you know what's going on when they come to the playoffs. You know who everybody is.
Yeah, they could have won. They could win every game they play if they wanted to.
Now, there was a couple of disturbances before the game. One was in Santa Ana, where a kid was booked for striking a police officer in the chest with a baseball-sized chunk of asphalt, according to the Santa Ana police sergeant.
He's in America. He's in America, and he's so outraged that his Mexican team loses that he assaults an American police officer.
This was 9/30.
Now, what's that guy doing?
2 hours before the game, 200 to 400 people congregated in anticipation of the game, and some were screaming insults at motorists. So when cops arrived, some of the fans began throwing rocks and bottles at their cars.
We can't do anything to deport that guy? Well, stupid loser running around, throwing concrete at police.
Well, I read a lot of comments from there's people that were born here that were still rooting for Mexico because they felt like it was just
had they won last night, there would have been annoying Mexican flags everywhere. I mean, they would have just been. They would have.
Yeah, I think the celebrating would have been. I think would have been stronger than.
Well, there's nothing there. Now they're screwed for the next 4 years.
Looks like most people just got sad over this instead of angry. Huntington Park. Some stores closed. That's where all the media went because they thought that something was going to happen in Huntington Park.
Oh, is that supposed to be a riot hotspot?
That apparently was, right. Some stores closed and the downtown section of Pacific Boulevard was barricaded before the game. Because apparently in 1999, you may not remember this, John, we were around, Huntington Park fans celebrating a Mexican win over Brazil blocked intersections, rocked cars, and harassed passersby.
I don't know.
So police had to use armored vehicles and tear gas. But you see, that was a win.
Maybe I was.
So if they had beaten the U.S. yesterday, it might have been a lot of.
Yeah, right. They would have been strutting. They would have been puffing their chest and waving their flags, and maybe a few Americans would have gotten annoyed by the flags, and you would have had a riot. But
the things I don't get, there was an editorial cartoon that I saw. They reprinted the caption, which was sort of it was about the game, and it said they took our oil, they took California. Please, Lord, they cannot take this game. And I'm like, wow, really? There was like 3 other things mentioned in the.
we took their women. We took everything from Mexico. Oh well, I don't know. See, but we don't care. Doesn't matter to us. And we beat you anyway. Ha ha. We beat you anyway. We don't care, and we beat you. How's that? Now what do you do?
The sporting event I wish I was at over the weekend, or maybe a lot of you do, was this golf tournament in Norco.
Yeah, the prostitution tournament. I want to know how they set this up.
This is unbelievable. They arrested 6 people early Saturday morning because sheriff's deputies from the Riverside County Sheriff's Department were hiding in trees to conduct surveillance at this golf tournament where they apparently set up tents and provided golfers with prostitutes.
Yeah.
The tents were set up on the greens. I guess it was late at night into early Saturday after the golf was done. It was time to... 19 women were interviewed. They interviewed more than 100 golfers and course employees during the raid.
19 women. So what, they had one for every hole and then somebody in the clubhouse?
Well, they've arrested so far.
Did he say one for every hole?
I think I did say that, yeah.
Say that.
That a hole for every hole.
This is the Hidden Valley Golf Club, and they've arrested a manager, a couple of managers there, on suspicion of pimping and pandering.
That sounds like an exclusive club, too, Norco.
And they arrested...
What's the dues there?
They arrested one 34-year-old